Welcome to our parking lot.
Hey.
This is the non-historic parking lot in Vicksburg, Mississippi. It probably is historic. We're probably on, I think we're on this Union Siege line.
Yeah, just behind us.
And of course, the reason we're meeting in this parking lot and not that parking lot, as everybody knows, we had a change in plans for what we had originally intended to do, but that's okay, because we're going to, it's like we're going to follow in the footsteps of General Grant. We're going to adapt to a changing situation. So, Tim's original idea, of course, we were going to go in the park and we were going to follow the Union assaults for May 19th and May 22nd. That kind of got put to the side, but the plan that General Tim has come up with, I think is going to, it's going to be just as good. We're going to have a great day today. And I was thinking that a very interesting thing about it is that we're going to be seeing the beginning of the Vicksburg Campaign at Chickasaw Bayou, and then we'll be seeing effectively the end of the campaign at Champion Hill. Plus, we're going to start with a Confederate victory. We're going to end with a Union victory. So, whatever side you favor, Union, Confederate, Republican, Democrat, we got you covered. You're good to go. So, I think it's going to work out good. I think we're going to have a good day. And everybody knows about lunch, right? That we're kind of going to be doing our own thing for lunch today. And I'm probably going to let you do the logistics. We're going to work that out. I'll let you tell everybody how we're going to do that. But I think we're probably just going to break for lunch, and Tim's going to have us meet up when we head out to Champion Hill, and he's going to cover that for everybody. Tim doesn't really need an introduction. I'm going to give him one. Tim has written some incredibly good books on Shiloh. Everybody knows he's expanded outside Shiloh. He's written a great book on Corinth. If you haven't read that, definitely get that one. He's written one on Grierson's Raid. He's written a great book on Champion Hill, which might come in handy today. What else have you written? I don't know. He's written lots of. He's written a book on Fort Donelson. He's working on some books on Vicksburg right now. So he's kind of got a little experience in this, and I personally think his book on Shiloh, Conquer or Perish, is the best book that you can get on Shiloh. And I don't say that just because Tim paid me to say it. Right? Really. I would have said it for free. So he's a great historian. He's a pretty good guy, Dr. Tim Smith.
That's my cue. All righty, well, welcome to Vicksburg. Normally we do this in Shiloh, of course, but we, what was it, 4 years ago, we branched out a little bit and went to Fort Donelson. That was right when the Fort Donelson book came out. And then we decided this year, with the assaults book coming out, we might as well go to Vicksburg, because all of it's tied together, obviously, and all of it's kind of intertwined a little bit. So, good group, wow, great group, and amid all the mess, sickness and politics both, all the mess. So, anyway, got my trusty sidekick with. Come here, Kate. Come over here. This is my teenager, Mary Kate, so you'll probably see her on the phone a lot today doing she's going to be my map holder. We're going to try to do maybe a little bit of different stuff today. Obviously, we can't get in the park. In their infinite wisdom, they decided that only they can do tours in the park, which I do not understand that. So we had to improvise, and so we're going to go to Chickasaw Bayou and Champion Hill, as Perry said. Unfortunately, it's not going to be quite as much hiking today as we normally do. We normally do what? Shane, how you doing? I didn't see you over there. Anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 to 15 miles. Chalmers was about 15, I think.
How many ravines?
We would have done that today in the park had we been allowed to do that, but we had to improvise. So if you were, how many of you were on the Lew Wallace thing we did, what, 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, years ago? This is almost a completely new group. We did more kind of a car caravan type of thing to see the different stops, because it's very spread out, as are these battlefields. So that's basically what we're going to do for most of the first part of the day, particularly Chickasaw Bayou, because it's very spread out. Hopefully take you to places that you've never been. How many of you have been out to the battlefield of Chickasaw Bayou? Okay. Okay, we got just a couple. So this will be new. What's the old NBC thing? New to you. If you hadn't seen it yet, it's new to you or whatever. So that's kind of the plan. We will do some hiking later this afternoon at Champion Hill. Walk up on the hill and to several different places. None of it, I don't think, is going to be shallow-esque in terms of ravines and creeks and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's an old roadway and a path and all of that. So, you know, there's steep hills and all that kind of stuff, but we're not going to be trudging through the wilderness or anything like that. Maybe a little bit, but I don't think you're going to need full-fledged hiking boots and all that. But we'll probably make 2 or 3 miles or so, I would guess, at Champion Hill. So that's kind of the plan. What I'm worried about logistically is car caravanning, particularly through Vicksburg and on the interstate. That was okay.
Is that from the Civil War era, or is that
Well, it's modern stuff and so on, but it shows you the historic,
the historic,
map of the river and so on. So.
Interesting.
I was afraid it might. If we had a bunch of traffic, the tail of the snake got chopped off a couple times at a couple of those stoplights, but we grew a new tail. So
he didn't wait for that burst, so he tried to get in front.
yeah, exactly.
I was a corpse on the tail.
Yeah. You may be other things before we get started. All right, we've got a map over here. Just to kind of give you the lay of the land a little bit, and this is a very nice map. It's used for staff rides and so on. In fact, I've got another one we'll get out a little bit later on, looking a little more detail. But the area that we're looking at right now, and I'm blocking y'all. Sorry, I need a pointer or something. When we're in the woods, I'd get a stick, but a stick around here somewhere. You can see the route of the Mississippi River today was different. Yeah. Do that. It's different than what it was in 1862. And when we were coming out, did y'all see off to the left the bed of the old river, which is now the Yazoo River? If you didn't see that, you can drive back by and you can see the old bend here of the river. That's where Porter made his run by the Vicksburg batteries and so on. Was wider then, of course, than it is now. The Yazoo River as well has changed somewhat. You can see the historic route of that, and we'll see more of that as we get up. Today, the channel comes down to what we just passed there. In those days, the channel went a little farther north there. Now, the other thing to make sure that you see, obviously the Vicksburg National Cemetery here. And I don't know, are they allowing visitors? Can you get in the National Cemetery? You can walk in. Okay, all right. Very beautiful cemetery, one of the largest Civil War cemeteries in the nation. And I don't know if you've noticed when we came by, they've had problems with erosion, with the banks sloughing off. And I think some bodies, not bodies, but whatever the bodies are in. And I want to talk to the folks. Not that I'm interested in McNamara stuff or anything like that, but I did a little bit of this work. At Shiloh, I've always been interested in what the bodies were buried in once they were dug up years later. And I found some evidence at Shiloh that and they weren't bodies then, and I don't want to get too gross early in the morning or anything, but basically bones is about all it was. And I found some evidence that they were put in like square iron boxes. Instead of what we think of as coffins or something like that, And so I've thought about talking to the folks at Vicksburg here and just never got around to it to see what actually was disinterred, and it's not just a body laying out. They buried them better than that after the war. So, but anyway, they've had some troubles with just huge amounts of rain down here. Y'all have had like just unreal for the last 2 or 3 years, haven't you? Just unreal.
Hurricane Zeta.
Yeah, hurricane. This is Hurricane Alley. It seems like the last couple of years.
They're doing work at the Texas Monument for erosion behind it.
On the railroad cut.
And they've got the park archaeologist guide for the southeast or whatever. He's out there because I was talking to him the other day, and he knows you might stop by there because he was saying stuff about.
They're the ones doing the work. Yeah. I wonder if it's. Well, they wouldn't be the same guys that it could be when I was at Shiloh. They would come do the Indian Mound and all that, and Of course, that's been 20 years ago or so. But at any rate, the main thing to show you here is this high ground up here, and you can see how it gets steeper going up the cemetery. It's been terraced, of course, since then, but you can really get a good view of it. And if you went around the park, and I think Union Avenue is now closed from Stockade Redan to the K Road. You can't get on that. Who was that? I did see some pictures. You put some pictures on it.
It's closed at Grant Circle.
At Grant Circle. Okay.
Everything else was open.
But you go back Graveyard Road and cross over to the Confederate side,
Okay.
turn right, it becomes two-way.
Right.
You get to the Cairo.
Okay. Huge erosion. The road just all messed up. In
Yeah,
it.
past Grant's Ferry, along where the Navy Circle.
Right.
There's two big washouts that are impossible to go over in a car.
Yeah,
it looks like a place where they blew up a mine. Almost.
That's happened around here before. At any rate, the high ground, if you look just directly behind you, you can actually, he mentioned Navy Circle, you can see the Navy Monument right up on top of the high ground up here. So the thing I want you to realize is this is the high ground, of course not where we are, but the high ground is just right there. Now, that is the start of the Mississippi Delta that goes from here. You can see how flat this is out here compared to this. This is the start of the Mississippi Delta. I saw, where were we last?
At the restaurant.
At the restaurant, it says the Mississippi Delta starts in the lobby of the Peabody, where the Peps walk through, and ends at something at Vicksburg, Cotton Row or something at Vicksburg. The Delta starts here, Fish Row, that's what it was. It goes from here to Memphis. And you can see, well, you can't really see it on this map, but it's flat land. Anybody ever traveled in the Delta? I grew up just in the hills, just up from the Delta, but completely flat and very difficult to get through. So this is the end of it. This is where the defenses are for defending the river, the only place south of Memphis, and the what's called the Chickasaw Bluffs down there. Now you run into a little bit of different, confusion and so on. This is Chickasaw Bayou, and sometimes in the archives and so on, you'll run into this called Chickasaw Bluffs. The actual Chickasaw Bluffs are up around Memphis and so on in Tennessee. But just want to kind of orient you, and we're not going to do just a whole lot here. We're actually, what we're going to do next is drive all the way up to Snyder's Bluff. Anybody been to Snyder's Bluff? Okay, you've been up there, been to Snyder's Bluff. We'll go all the way to Snyder's Bluff. It's about 12 miles or so, and do that for a couple different reasons. We stopped here, of course, because I thought we may have trouble getting everybody together. But we're going to go to Snyder's Bluff, and that's where we're really going to lay out the Confederate defenses and all that, and then we're going to come back and start focusing in on Chickasaw Bayou. But right here is where we are, where this line of hills stops right at this hairpin turn of the river, and it's Snyder's Bluff. If you and I'm walking y'all right here. Is that Perry calling you, telling me to hurry up, get on? There's only one place, actually a little two kind of, where the Yazoo River touches the bluffs between here and Memphis, that you can get through. And the Delta is very difficult to get through. You can get through it, but not with large armies, and not basically without a boat. So wherever the hills touch the river is going to become extremely important. I'll explain more about that as we get up to Snyder's Bluff. So here's what we're doing. We're going to ride up, I forget what actually this is, Old 61, I guess. Yeah. But we're going to hit New 61 up here. So just, again, I don't think it'll be any problem, not a lot of traffic and so on, but just keep up. Don't let it, be wide lags between vehicles, because there are a couple of fairly nice interchanges that we're going to have to go through. And then we go up, maybe, what is that, 3 or something. I forget what the actual names are. But we're going up to Snyder's Bluff there, and then we'll take a look at the actual defenses between these two areas. Any questions on any of that? Yes, sir.
Exactly where are we on the map?
We are right here. We're right at, well, maybe just a tad, probably right here. Actually, we are where the race course, if you've ever run across any reference to the race course, the racetrack, was actually right across that. You see that bridge right there in the silos and so on. The Vicksburg City Racetrack was just right over there. It's a log lumber mill kind of thing. Now, actually, later in the day, we're going to come back and go over that bridge and go back to the Yazoo and all that kind of stuff. That was one of the main roads in here. There are 4 routes, and we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. There are 4 routes that the Union forces can use to get to these high bluffs, and that's what they're after. That's the goal of the whole thing, to get to these high bluffs up here so that they can encapsulate and take Vicksburg. So there are 4 routes. One is the main road from Johnson's plantation by the race course here that will meet what is called the Valley Road, which is basically the road we're going to take. So I got sidetracked. I was trying to tell you what we were going to do. As we go out this road, you will see very high bluffs on the right. You'll see nothing but lowland on the left. That's the start of the delta, of course. And these Chickasaw Bluffs, these are Chickasaw Bluffs, Tennessee, Chickasaw Bayou, referencing the Walnut Hills and so on, will be on your right. You'll see the big tall bluffs. We'll get better looks at them a little bit later on. But this is basically the historic Valley Road that the Confederates are trying to hold to move troops back and forth and so on to defend these areas. So we're traveling the historic route. So notice kind of how it slopes down toward what will be Chickasaw Bayou out to your left, and we'll explain all that a little bit later. So follow us as we go to Snyder's Bluff there. Any other questions?
Where are we now on that map?
We're right here. Yeah. Still right here. Any other questions?
There's no trees back
I'm
no, not as many. They've been cut down and for several different reasons. Steamboats, you know, they would have what are called lumber yards where the slaves and others would chop wood and sell to the steamboats. But certainly in wartime, you want to cut all this down so you get good fields of fire and be able to see the smoke on the river. You know, hey, they're coming kind of stuff. So no, it wouldn't have been as yeah. You could have seen the river. Any other questions? Okay, whose pen is this?
Is there a marker like a gas station at Snyder's Bluff or something?
No, there's not. There's a little monument just off to the left. Y'all are just going to have to follow me. It's on the high ground. You go across Skillet, Goliath Brook, the creek there, and it's right after the big interchange that goes across the Yazoo. And we're going to do that in just a minute, but. There's a little monument out there, but I think you'll see it's the big group of cars basically that you'll see. Thank you. I don't think you can miss it.
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Back that way, the Confederate artillery position.
Yes.
Who was that?
What battery? I have no idea. I don't know the units off the top of my head like I do at Shiloh.
Yeah.
And
there's not a trouble.
you know,
To look it up.
that's the thing. I've a lot of people have tried to get Tim Kissel to do a monument map like this, or like Shiloh for this, and there's just so many monuments though. They're so difficult. They call this, Terry Winchell calls this the art park of the world, you know, because there's so many monuments and so on. So it would be very difficult to do, but hopefully one day he will do it. But yeah, I don't know specifically what battery that was. If you'll notice though, most of the batteries are a little bit lower down. You know, everybody thinks, well, let's put the battery on the very top of the hill. Well, you don't want to do that because if you're going to shoot at the boats down in the river, you got to depress your gun. What happened to the cannonball when you depress the gun? It rolls out, you know, or maybe not won't seat as well, but. You put them lower down. You saw this at Fort Donelson. When we were at Fort Donelson, you didn't put them just on the highest hill up there. You put them down a little bit higher in the river so you can get the plunging shot. But you don't want them just, you know, level of the river, but you don't want them way up either. So that's kind of what we've got going on here.
Was Vicksburg fortified before the war? Or,
No.
I mean, there was no military significance before the war?
No. There was no reason to. Now, a little caveat to that. There were old like French and Spanish fortifications back in the 1600s, 1700s, probably 1700s. Right where you get Fort Hill back a little bit that way was called Fort Nogales. And out at Snyder's Bluff, we'll see there was a French fort out there, French Fort, somebody help me out, St. Pierre or something like that. We'll see it when we get out there. I forget the name of it right now. So there were some fortifications back in colonial times when the French and the Spanish and the English were all at each other, and you got to fortify because of Indians and all that like that. But nothing Civil War related and anything modern. And actually the fortifications here don't start going up until around the summer of 1862 when Farragut passes the the batteries down at below New Orleans, and then they figure out real quick, we better start, there's nothing between here and there to stop them, so we better start fortifying a little bit. And you get some stuff along the river, not to the extent that you'll get later in the siege. And then it's the fall of 1862 when they figure out, you know, all an army's got to do is march in behind these guns on the river, and that's when they start fortifying behind the city there. And then they figure out, and this is what gets into us here, that for an army to get to these rear fortifications and put us under siege, all they got to do is just come up the Yazoo and march up these hills, and they'll be right there. So we got to stop them from marching up these hills, and that's when we get into the Chickasaw Bayou here. It's a good question. You know, get right into what we're doing. All right, we can stand here and ask questions all day, but we'll do questions as we go along.
Yeah, have old roads on it too.
I think these are modern roads, but I think the red is kind of marked with what is historic roads. Everybody here? Okay. All right. One of the problems with dealing with non-shallow battlefields is, and I can't remember exactly what we did at Fort Donelson, but at any rate, again, we don't have a trailhead map, and even if we did, we probably wouldn't extend this far out, and we don't have a good map dealing with Chickasaw Bayou. In fact, if you go online and start Googling Chickasaw Bayou maps, you don't find really anything very good. You run into the Library of Congress, and Sherman created a couple of maps and so on. His engineers did, and they're way off base. They're bad wrong. So we don't really have anything to go by. So
you go to 16th Ohio.
16th Ohio
has a website.
Okay, is that where you got that?
We got a couple
from?
decent ones. They're okay.
Yeah, they're not just totally
accurate. They're not 100%, yeah. But they're at least gives you a lay of the land.
Yeah. So I thought we would bring this thing. Just going to kind of draw it. I'm not the best drawer in the world, but I do have color coded. We're going to do Union blue and Confederate red and all that. I don't know how this is going to go. We're going to try it though. That's about all we got. All right, this is Snyder's Bluff, also called Snyder's Mill. You may run into Haynesbluff, Drumgold's Bluff. Specifically, Haynesbluff is just I don't know, half a mile or less to our north. There's a big what do we got? Spider web there. There's like a big plant, a chemical plant or something up there. Big silos, concrete silos. If you go right up this road, you'll see it. We won't go up there. No need in that. So that's Haynesbluff. This is Snyder's Bluff. Drumgold's Bluff is basically between here and Vicksburg. So you'll kind of see them all used interchangeably. All of this is the Walnut Hills. From here to Vicksburg are known as the Walnut Hills. I ran into a soldier account the other day that said, I don't know why they call it Walnut Hills. There's nothing but poplar trees up there. Why don't they call it poplar trees? You know. So, but anyway, now let me kind of give you the lay of the land just a little bit. I'm gonna kind of try to draw this as much to scale. We won't use our blue for water, but let's just say this is the Mississippi Tennessee line, and here is Memphis. Where's our Memphis folks? We got Memphis folks here, and we got some Memphis folks over here. Hey, that's a good idea. You just carry a clip around here in case we need a clip. You were a Girl Scout.
I'm an Eagle Scout, and I don't do that.
Clip lady.
Okay, the Mississippi River, and again, this is kind of best I can.
That's the best Mississippi River.
River you've seen this morning, right?
Yeah, that's before it changed.
All right. Yeah. Vicksburg is, and if you look on current maps or anything, where it makes that dive out, that's basically Jackson, Mississippi. Is that wet, Kate? I don't know how we got that wet. And then the Southern Railroad of Mississippi. Here. The Delta. Let's use brown for see what Mama wants. I'm sure that's Mama. But the Delta. Oh, it's Leah Grace, her sister. Talking about the election. These girls have gotten all into the election. Anyway, the Bluffs will do something like this.
Where's Carrollton?
Carrollton is where I grew up. Is right about here, right up on in the hills. So we'll even make this kind of
Bluffy.
That's not a, yeah, that looked like Bluff.
Bluff line.
That's him.
Okay. Now,
Good job.
flat as it can be, completely flat as a pancake out in here. Hills and so on up here. Well, there. Okay, so did you text your back? Okay. The Southern Railroad of Mississippi, of course, being on the high ground between Vicksburg and Jackson. The Mississippi Central are actually up to Canton. It is the New Orleans, Jackson, and Great Northern, or something like that. Come up from New Orleans, and then it's the Mississippi Central farther on up in the hills. Of course, you don't want to go through the middle of the delta for that. Okay, so how do you get to Vicksburg if you are the Federal Army encamped up in Tennessee, LaGrange and Bolivar and all that? Sherman, of course, camped over. Those are tents, by the way, at Memphis. So how do you get to Vicksburg? Well, in the logical way, in the theoretical way, in the way that the books say to do it, is that you go along a secure supply line. Well, you got two options here. One is go down the railroad to Jackson and across, and then you've got a secure supply line. The other is go down the river with transports, and you've got a secure supply line there. Well, Grant figures, okay, we're going to go down the railroad because this is new and interesting stuff, great new technology, the Industrial Revolution, all that. So Grant starts moving southward along the Mississippi Central Railroad. This is called the Mississippi Central Campaign. Through Holly Springs, through Oxford, down to Water Valley. I'm getting a little below myself here. Water Valley's maybe up here. Coffeyville, you may have heard of a little battle at Coffeyville. Grenada, Mississippi, right on down here. The problem is the Confederates are defending as Grant moves down. Now, there are certain rivers, and this is where we're getting into the importance. I'm laying the stage here for what's going on here. Let's see if we can get down to there. You got another clip by chance?
You got another clip.
You better hire her.
Yeah. The main river that we're dealing with is the Yazoo River, which will flow into the Mississippi River just north of Vicksburg. The mouth is right here. Now, it's different now than it was then. It will flow essentially right along the edge of the bluffs here. There you go. Very good. Thank you. Right along the edge of the bluffs all the way up to Greenwood, Mississippi. Greenwood is right in the delta just west of Carrollton there. Now, it's a little more complicated than that, but you get the idea. And there are a bunch of other rivers, the Little Sunflower River, Deer Creek, and all that flowing into it. Now, once you get to Greenwood, and the river's flowing south, of course, so the headwaters are all up in the hills here, there are a series of 4 rivers that curve off of this high ground that eventually flow into the Yazoo River. Starting farther to the north is the Coldwater River that flows north of Holly Springs and does something like this. Then a little bit farther south, just north of Oxford, you have the Tallahatchie River. Same Tallahatchie River that Billy Joe McAllister jumped off the bridge at. It'll go down. The Coldwater actually will flow into the Tallahatchie. Just south of Oxford, you have the Yakna, or the Yaknapatofa River. Anybody heard of Yaknapatofa? Anybody Faulkner fans? William Faulkner, Yaknapatofa County, and so on. It'll flow into the Tallahatchie right before it combines with the Coldwater. And then just north of Grenada, you'll have the Yallabusha River, which will flow into the Tallahatchie at Greenwood, and both then will make the Yazoo River. So as Grant begins to move southward, the Confederates will defend behind these rivers. They will defend behind the Coldwater River, and then they will be driven back and will fall back. Grant will move on to the Tallahatchie early December 1862. The Confederates will withdraw from the Tallahatchie line, mainly because there is a movement inland from the Helena, Arkansas area, in behind trying to hit this railroad around Grenada, around Coffeyville, and the Confederates will have to fall back. So Grant continues to move forward across the Yakna, all the way down to close to the Yallabusha, where the Confederates have situated their line of defense along the Yallabusha River. Now, what's important to us is that Grant then decides, okay, we're probably not going to be able to make this all the way down the railroad because things are already getting a little dicey with the Confederates burning bridges and all that, and going to get real dicey when Earl Van Dorn leads a cavalry raid northward to hit Holly Springs on December the 20th and breaks Grant's supply base there, destroys the supply base where they got just immense amounts of stores supplied there. Nathan Bedford Forrest is up in Tennessee, about her forehead, raiding the Mobile and Ohio along the Obion River up at Union City and so on. So the combination of both of those eventually tells Grant, we're not going to be able to do this by the book along the railroad. Now Grant has decided though to send Sherman. Sherman has actually moved down during Grant's movement, crossed the Tallahatchie at White Ferry and moved on down to Oxford. Grant says, all right, Sherman, you go back to Memphis, prepare, and open up kind of a second front along the river. So you go along the river down here and you take Vicksburg. And I will hold the Confederate Army here at Grenada. You go take Vicksburg, go around their flank, basically. So this is the starting of the Chickasaw Bayou operation here. Sherman does so. He leaves Memphis around the 20th, 21st of December. He will pick up another division at Helena under Frederick Steele. He will have 4 divisions. We'll detail them in just a little bit. And then he'll continue along the river, burning plantations and breaking railroads over in Louisiana. He will reach this vicinity on about Christmas Day at Milliken's Bend. And then on the day after Christmas, he will start up the Yazoo River, which we'll draw a new map then. By that time, of course, Van Dorn has hit Grant, and Grant realizes, okay, we can't do this. They're going to realize we can't do it really this way either, and so the by the book stuff, and I'm getting ahead of myself, and this is bigger picture, Grant says, take that book and throw it off that hill there. We don't care about the book, and he's going to start doing things not by the book. The problem is it's in the winter, and we don't really have a book to tell you how to do things during the winter. So he starts doing Yazoo Pass and Steele's Bayou and all that stuff that don't work. But then finally, when it dries out later in April, he's really going to do not by the book, and that's go south of Vicksburg, and we'll talk about that this afternoon when we get in reference to Champion Hill. That is certainly not the way you do it. That's not the way that Napoleon drew it up in Jomini and Clausewitz and all that. So you have to think outside the box just a little bit. Now, the problem, do we have a question?
Be creative.
Be creative, that was great. Improvise, just like we've done this trip. Now, the problem is, here, when Sherman lands and goes up the Yazoo, you've got a force here and a force basically, the Grant falls back behind the Tallahatchie. So to get reinforcements or to support one another, what do you have to do? You've got to go all the way back up to Memphis and around. That is called what? Military. Anybody retired military here? In military parlance, what's that called? That's called exterior lines of communications. You got to go a long way around to get there. Now, if you're the Confederates who are holding here at Vicksburg, what all do you have to do to support each other? You just go back and forth along the rail lines and maybe the Yazoo River here, and this is called what? Interior lines of communication. So if Grant's going to support Sherman, he's got a long way to go, and you got a lot less time it's going to take for the Confederates to reinforce back and forth than it's going to take for the Federals to reinforce. So Pemberton is using the book here, and he is aided by these interior lines of communication. All right, let's specifically get down to Chickasaw Bayou and what's important about Snyder's Bluff here. As I said, get my colors mixed up here. The Yazoo River will only touch this bluff. It's called, where I grew up at Carrollton going to Greenwood, it's called Valley Hill. You go down just like that. These strong bluffs all the way around. You'll see them more at Walnut Hills and so on. Very bold bluffs, and the Yazoo River again only touches those bluffs at Vicksburg, just like we saw there, and then about 12 miles north at Snyder's Bluff and Haynesbluff. And I think I'll switch the picture and see that again. Now, if you follow the Yazoo on up, you go through Yazoo City, Greenwood, and so on, you're well in the Delta at that point. So for the Federals, if you're looking at Confederate defensive lines, how are you going to defend from Vicksburg to Grenada, the Yallabusha line, and then farther on and so on? Well, you don't have to defend the area in between, because even if they somehow got on the river, then they're going to have to march through more of the delta to get on the high bluffs and so on. And there's really no way to get in the river except the Yazoo mouth here. So you're kind of blocking all this off. Now, they do try the Yazoo Pass. They try to get in there, and they do wind up in some of these rivers and so on, but they get pushed back at Greenwood at Fort Pemberton in March and April. So you really don't have to worry about the stretch between Snyder's Bluff and where the Delta, the Yallabusha at the Delta, Tuskahoma, Mississippi, around Holcomb. But you do have to defend then along the railroad, because if they come by the book again, they're going to come down the railroad. Now, what about across over in the rest of Mississippi over there? Do you have to defend all that? Well, armies can't just go marching off through the middle of nowhere. They have to have a line of defense most of the time, and that would be the railroad. So you don't have to really defend all the way over to Alabama and all of that. Now, you know, you look in larger context, Sherman's Atlanta campaign. When Sherman's moving toward Atlanta, what's he using? What's he moving on? That railroad, right? Well, what happens in late May? He moves off the railroad and goes over to New Hope Church and all that kind of stuff. And it starts raining and so on. What does he have to do? Real quick, move right back over to the railroad. Armies couldn't operate out here. Now, smaller units could. Benjamin Grierson will go right there, but that's, you know, a brigade of cavalry, not an army that you have to supply, so he can live off the land. So all the Confederates have to do is block the railroad, block at Vicksburg here, and the rest is pretty much taken care of because of this big delta. Now, let's focus in on Snyder's Bluff and so on down here. Okay, Vanna White, let's turn the page here. She has no idea who Vanna White is.
What about the western, what the other side of the Mississippi? Was there anything going on in Louisiana and Arkansas? Or?
Well, yeah, over in the hills of Arkansas, you got delta over there just like that.
I mean, to cut off that supply on the Mississippi.
Well, it's lowland. It's no real place to below Memphis, and even farther north of Memphis. There's no place to defend like that either.
Okay.
There's a little bit of high ground in Helena. Do what?
Couldn't go in and disrupt that supply line.
No, not really. They're federal operations in there. You'll get into the Little Rock, campaign a little bit later on. The Federals hold Helena on the Mississippi River, so there's nothing really can be done over there either. Okay. All right. Let's say Vicksburg is here, and it makes that hairpin turn just like that, and then goes back over like that. Here's the railroad. The Yazoo River today it'll come in right here. At that time, we'll say it came in like right up the bluff here. It'll do something like this. Let's see, and then kind of make a couple of swirlicues like that, and then go on up. The high ground will do basically this. We'll do our bluff here. All right, this is Snyder's Bluff and Haynesbluff. Now, as you can see, the river only touches the bluffs at a couple of places. Now, if you and here's more bluffs, of course, right here that we just saw. If you're the Confederates and going to defend this, yes, you can ring Vicksburg like they will do, but all the Union Army to get in rear of that, and this is where Grant wants to get. This high ground east of Vicksburg. Now the problem is getting there. He's trying to come down the railroad to do it. He wants Sherman to land on the Yazoo and get up there. But this is where Grant wants to go. Later in his memoirs, he talks about I was on the high ground on the same side of the river with the enemy, and I thought everything was okay there. If you're going to stop the enemy from coming and getting in the rear of Vicksburg, you're going to have to do it by defenses along these bluffs all the way up to Snyder's Bluff, to where we are. It's about 12 miles. Because if the Federals come in, just like they do, on the Yazoo River, come up the Yazoo River, and they land here and there are no Confederate defenses, all they got to do is just march up the bluffs and get in the rear. Okay, you put big guns at Snyder's Bluff here. and you block any Union movement up the Yazoo River, or else they could just go anywhere up here and get off the boats and march over to the high ground. So you stop Union movement on the river there, can't go past that, and so now the Federals are forced in this kind of triangular area right here to land and start moving forward, and of course you have Confederate defenses for 12 miles. Now, it's not totally trenches and forts and all that for 12 miles. Most of what you've got are lakes and bayous and all kind of stuff, and you'll see some of that as we get down to it. There are 4 routes, as we said, 4 routes from this area into Vicksburg, and we'll talk about that. 3 plantations: Benson Blake's plantation, Annie Lake's plantation, Walter Johnson's plantation. I'll show you where those are in just a little bit. So Sherman, as he's moving up the Yazoo River, will land. He can't get past Snyder's Bluff, which is right here. This is the importance of Snyder's Bluff. The actual guns are a little bit down the bluff. Again, we're up on the top and you can't really see it. I think it's on private land just down below. I'm not sure what all this is. This could have been some kind of fortifications. When you go back to your vehicles, you can look. I don't know enough about it out here. I'm still researching and so on to know if these are original fortifications or anything. But this is where you stop movement up the Yazoo. So the only options the Union forces have are to get off the river here, move through these 3 plantations toward these defenses that are extending up from Vicksburg, and hopefully drive through them, take the heights beyond, and move to the area that Grant wants to be and take Vicksburg. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So we can look around. You can go up. I wouldn't climb on that garbage pile for anything, you know, but you can kind of get a view. Do that?
You can walk up on that dirt pile and you can see the
Okay.
Delta.
Can you see? You can certainly see the valley from here, even just right through there. And what we're going to do next when we leave, I don't know if y'all saw the big bridge or not, just to get you a view of the Yazoo River, we're going to go over that bridge and just turn around in the first place that we can to come back, and then we're going to go back to the battlefield of Chickasaw Bayou down here. But that'll give you a view not only of the Yazoo River, how big it is and what it looks like up here, but it will also give you a view of Snyder's Bluff and the high ground that we're talking about here. So that's just kind of a little detour we'll make. Just follow me and look at the sights, and then we're going back just like we came right back down here to the battlefield of Chickasaw Bayou, and that's where we'll stop, and we'll do another map and detail the battlefield of Chickasaw Bayou itself. All right, any questions on Snyder's Bluff here? Yes, sir.
Well, when we cross over the bridge, looking at the Yazoo, is it about the same size as the period then?
As far as I know, it's about the same size. How much the Corps of Engineers have done, there's a canal now a little bit to the north, I think, that is used for transportation and so on, and maybe some of this is as well, I'm not sure. But as far as I know, about the same width. Now, when you cross the bridge, if you look to your left, you won't be able to see it, I don't think, but just to the left will be where the Cairo went down and where the Cairo was raised and so on. You really want a picture of that?
Yes, I do.
It looks like a big jumbled mess.
We can probably auction that.
Yeah, well, there will be.
You can computer
Along with some others.
With clips. All right, any other questions? Oh, yes, sir.
Let me just make a couple of suggestions.
Okay.
Unrelated to this. Next week, if anybody comes down with COVID, to post on the Facebook page, the College Discussion Group Facebook page, that you got it, so we all know we've all potential exposure.
Right. Well, let's hope that don't happen.
Yeah.
So.
The other thing,
And we can social distance, you know, there's nothing.
I think being out in the open, I think we're all good.
Yeah.
But just in case. I got the Army's staff guide book for the Vicksburg Campaign. We all know the importance of the Mississippi. It refers to the Mississippi as being the interstate of the time.
Yeah.
Because it's transportation importance.
And that's why Grant is using it as the second prong of the attack zone. Okay, so you can look at this, you can go look at the monuments and so on, look around a little bit if you want to, and then we'll head out.
I will give these to you later.
Okay, yeah, you'll be the on the 27th, I believe, and there's a little bit of fighting back and forth, but nothing. And there's an intention to storm Snyder's Bluff after Chickasaw Bayou fails on the 29th. On the 31st, there's a plan to attack, get ready that night, and then storm these bluffs on January the 1st. But there's a heavy fog over the river during the night, and they call it off. So no, to answer your question, no, there's not a major battle by any means. No fighting.
Was the Cairo involved in the bombardment?
No, the Cairo actually sinks on the 12th, prior to the operations here on the 29th and 30th and 31st. And so what they are doing, of course, is taking the river.
Over here?
It's a little higher.
Okay. Right, Mom.
That's a gumbo to me, that's too.
Parking lot real quick. If everybody remove your hat, we're going to sing a hymn of. Hey, you got a stick. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Where'd you get that? Oh, you came up with it. All right. Okay. Let's move these maps. Okay. What we we came down the line. We're about here now. And what we saw in between, out to your right, was just big fields. That's Benson Blake's plantation. We're still on basically from here that way up to Snyder's Bluff is Benson Blake's plantation. And then Annie Lakes and Walter Johnson's a little bit farther on. Let's do a big map of this. Hold that one over. We may tear it off anyway. Okay. This may not have been such a good idea. Hey, there we go. All right. All right. Here's Vicksburg. The bluffs are going to do something, and this is all very, very general, of course. Something like that. There's our bluffs. Here's Snyder's Bluff up here. The Yazoo River will do something like that. We'll make it. All right. And everybody get a good view of the river, and then you look up the river and you can see the big bluff up from that cell phone tower. So anybody look to the left and see that railroad bridge, the swivel?
Yes.
That's kind of cool. Okay, so we got kind of a triangle of land, and I didn't do it quite good enough. It's a little more triangular than that. There are various bayous and so on that come off of the Yazoo River. One is called Thompson's Lake, and it's just right out here. We're going to drive up there next. Chickasaw Bayou itself will come off and do something like this. And then, when we think of a bayou, and you'll see some examples of probably what it looked like then it turns into basically a creek, a pretty deep and wide creek that does something like this. And then it goes into a bigger lake called Mcnutt Lake. Mcnutt Lake. Can y'all read that? Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's Mcnutt Lake. And then you get into basically here. Yeah. This is another big watershed here. Eons and eons ago, ever how long ago it was, this was the old river. Right here. Now, by the time of the Civil War, the bed had changed and it came in from like here end to right here, and this was known as the Old River. And you'll see on maps, Old River. In fact, steamboats would go up into that and turn around, you know, and back out and so on. Now, it's changed again, and that is actually the current Yazoo River. So the current Yazoo River was the Old River then. So Sherman's flotilla, 70-something transports, steamboats and so on, all these ironclads and tinclads and so on would come up the Yazoo River by December the 26th and land basically in this stretch between the Old River and the mouth of Chickasaw Bayou. Now, to move inland against high ground here, to keep the Federals from doing that, the Confederates have established fortifications along the bluffs, basically just like this. Some are extended a little bit farther forward toward Chickasaw Bayou and so on, and they're basically watching 4 different areas. I don't know where my brown one is, but anyway, there are 4 routes, 4 roads that you can get through all this maze of lakes and so on into basically the road back here where the Confederate defenses are. One is the Johnson Plantation Road that goes by the race course that we just stopped at that Texaco station. It does something like that. So that's road number 1. The Lake Plantation Road will do something like this and will cross right where Chickasaw Bayou turns into basically a creek. There's a ford there that's kind of corduroyed, put stuff in the bottom of it so you can go across the ford. And it will, you're trying to get to this road at the base of the bluffs here. So that will go in there. Across Thompson Lake, this is Thompson, this is Chickasaw Bayou. There's a levee that Blake has put up to keep water out of his fields. There's a big levee here, so you can move on top of that levee. It's wide enough on the top for a road, and you can get into the road there. And then there's a ford across Chickasaw Creek, or Chickasaw Bayou as it's known, right about here. That's called the sand spit. It's just kind of a shallow space that sand is washed in. And some argue that it's washed. See the Chickasaw Bluffs on the Walnut Hills on the back there? That so much sediment has washed out off these hills and has filled in a little bit right there. So we've got another road that does something like this. Now there's an Indian mound right here that we'll talk about in just a little bit. So 4 routes, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now up here is nothing but swamp and fields and so on, but you can't get through these swamps. So from Snyder's Bluff to Vicksburg, there's only 4 routes that the Union forces are going to be able to move across. At the race course, at the sand spit, at the ford, and along Vincent Blake's levee here. Now, Federals will move 27th and 28th of December all along these routes. 3 brigades land as early as the 26th. Frank Blair's brigade will lead the way along the Lake Plantation Road. There'll be some skirmishing out in here, and we'll see that in just a little bit. Frederick Steele's division will actually land on the northeast side of Thompson Lake. We're going to see that in just a little bit. And we'll move down into all these are swamps and so on down here. You can't press forward here, but that's Steele. And then others over the course of the 27th and 28th will continue to move all along these areas, filtering in till their lines are basically behind Mcnutt Lake and Chickasaw Bayou here. Eventually Steele will get back on the boats and come back in here and go in here as well. So everything is concentrated between Chickasaw Bayou and the road going to the race course in Mcnutt Lake. Now the 2 major attacks will take place at the sand spit here, and we can't get to that. That's on private property. We'll show you, I'll explain to you where we go when we get close to it, and we'll kind of go off in there a little bit, but we can't really get to it. But it's not a major attack anyway. The 6th Missouri will try to cross there, but won't be able to make it. Now the Federals along the Johnson Plantation Road never will really attack. The major attack is going to come along the Lake Plantation Road at this ford here. And that's where the major attack is going to take place. Now, Union divisions, there are 4 Union divisions. The one operating on this road is A.J. Smith. You've heard of Andrew Jackson Smith. He will be commanding He'll be commanding a division at Champion Hill, we will see. Just to his left will be, and this gets a little confusing, is Morgan L. Smith. M.L. Smith. M.L.S. Y'all can read that. So we got Andrew Jackson Smith, Morgan L. Smith. Now, Morgan Smith's brother is Giles Smith, who is a brigade commander under M.L. Smith. So his brother is a brigade commander under him. Unfortunately, Morgan Smith is wounded in the hip in the skirmishing on the 28th, and so he has to give way. And so A.J. Smith takes over M.L. Smith's command and commands both divisions. So you got a bunch of Smiths running around here, which is a bad thing. Just ask us. Anybody else other Smiths? You got any other Smiths in here? Anyway, you got a whole bunch of Smiths. Now, making it even more confusing, the next division over, right here, going along the Lake Plantation Road, is George W. Morgan. So you got Morgan Smith and George Morgan, and you know it gets a little more complicated. And then you've got Frederick Steele. It's going to get a lot quieter than this. We're going to go back in the middle of nowhere. In fact, she was asking where we're going to go, and I told her we may encounter some unreached peoples, you know, in the Amazon. There may be some of those out here. Yeah, we may do that. Frederick Steele's division will come in and kind of hold in reserve. One brigade will go across. So that's kind of the lay of the land. The Confederate defenses are under the command of Stephen D. Lee. There are 6 regiments basically holding this position on the 26th when Sherman first starts entering and landing troops here. 6 regiments that can hold from Vicksburg basically up to here. Now there are a couple of more up at Snyder's Mill, the 3rd Mississippi, and I believe the 22nd Louisiana. The 27th Louisiana, I believe, is garrisoning Vicksburg, but there are not a lot of extra troops to go around here. Now, fortunately for the Confederates, along the bluffs, you see how this is kind of sloping upward a little bit right here. The Confederate lines, and again, this is not a preserved battlefield. We don't know, you know, I haven't been up those hills there. I don't know whether there's any remnants of earthworks. I would guess, you know, they've been obliterated by the buildings and so on. And plus all the erosion. I mean, you can tell there's a lot of erosion. So, but the Confederate lines are on the bottom of the bluff, on the high ground though, where it slopes up toward them, so that they can get an advantage here. So the Confederate lines here. These 6 regiments are quickly augmented over the course of the 27th and 28th by reinforcements from mainly Grenada. Remember those interior lines of communication that we talked about? And so they're bringing them in by railroad to Vicksburg and quickly pushing them out into this area. John Vaughn's brigade of Tennesseans, who had one in the 10th? Was that you in the 10th? Your guys in the hospital, but the 10th and the 3rd, and I believe the 30th come out into here. John Gregg's brigade some of those I believe are Georgians. Seth Barton's brigade, we'll see them at Champion Hill a little bit later on. Of Carter Stevenson's division, it's been shipped from Bragg's army in Tennessee. Down here, the elite elements of that division arrive, and Georgians will go into here. So by the main attack on the 29th, there are like 3 extra brigades here. So Sherman really missed his chance by not pushing in on the 26th when there were relatively few numbers of Confederate troops here. But Stephen D. Lee will command this sector, and we'll talk about some of the defenses as we get into some of the major attacks here. Okay, so on the 29th, we have a small attack here. Nothing really happens on the Johnson Plantation Road. A small attack at the Indian Mound and the Sand Spit. And again, I'll tell y'all after the next stop kind of where that is, just to show you. But we're going to key in now on a couple of these attacks. Number 1, on the 28th, Frederick Steele will land on that side of Thompson Lake. And we'll push forward. There'll be some heavy skirmishing. It's not a major assault, but he figures out we can't get across there, and then they will fall back and move into this area on the 29th. One of his brigades, Blair's brigade, will cross Chickasaw Bayou and attack in between the two, and I'll show you that as well. So what we're going to do next is take this road right here, and we're going to go up by Thompson Lake, and we won't go too far. You see one part of Thompson Lake, you've seen it all. So we'll turn around and come back, but we'll get a real good view of the Walnut Hills, and we'll kind of discuss the attacks that take place on the 28th with Steele on that side of Thompson Lake, as well as Blair's attack on the 29th here. Then we'll come back out on the main road here, and we'll go down and we'll kind of just drive by this small attack by the 6th Missouri on the Indian Mound, the Sand Spit area, and then we're going to go off out into here, or actually into here, and follow Sherman as he moves forward, particularly on the Lake Plantation Road to the main attack that occurs at the ford there. So that's the lay of the land. That's kind of how we're going to do things. Any questions on? Oh gosh, we got a bunch of questions. Yes, sir.
The troops at Memphis, they were really McCurran, new recruits.
Well, you get into politics here. John A. McClernand has been tasked by the President and the Secretary of War, Edward Stanton, to raise troops and basically raise an army and go down and take Vicksburg. Now, the problem is they didn't tell Halleck about this, they didn't tell Grant about it, this is secretive, and nobody knows about this. So what you're doing, you're putting two different commanders basically in the same place. Now there's a little headroom there. The orders actually say you take all these troops you've recruited and can use them unless the departmental commander needs them elsewhere, and you can bet your bottom dollar Grant's going to need them elsewhere, because he doesn't want McClernand to have the glory and to win all this and so on. So McClernand is in Illinois, gathering troops from Illinois, Iowa, and Indiana. While Grant is at, we didn't get into this, get into politics and so on, Grant's back at Oxford on his movement down into Mississippi, and he's getting wind of what McClernand's doing. And so that's part of the reason that he sends Sherman back up to Memphis to go down the Mississippi River to capture Vicksburg. Because if you capture Vicksburg, the problem's gone, right? It's not his problem anymore. It relieves the whole thing of why McClernand was set out and so on. So it's a rush. It's an absolute rush for Sherman to get back to Memphis, get the troops, get Steele at Helena, and get down here. And this is why the thing is so rushed and the attack and so on. Trying to take care of this before McClernand gets down here. And boy, when McClernand gets down here, he's going to be ill as a hornet. And he is when he reaches here, like on the 4th of January. After Sherman has failed here. So there's politics, a lot of politics involved in this as well. Yes, sir.
Were there any Alabama units involved this early in this particular area?
Most of the Alabama units are with Pemberton's army in Grenada. In fact, Pemberton is in Grenada on Christmas Day, on the 24th and 25th, actually with Jefferson Davis. The president himself has come west to review the situation. He'll give a speech the day after Christmas in the Mississippi House Chamber in the old Capitol in Jackson. He'll address the Mississippi legislature. But on Christmas Day, they're at Grenada reviewing the troops. When word arrives, and this is the famous incident where the telegraph operators over in Louisiana send word during the night on Christmas Eve, the night of the 24th and 25th, and they're having a Christmas Eve ball at the Balfour House. There's your Balfour House in Vicksburg. He's a secret admirer of Emma Balfour. And so they're having this ball, and this muddy courier comes in and says, we've just gotten word that 70-something transports are approaching Vicksburg. And that breaks up the ball, of course, and Smith starts sending troops out. He sends Stephen D. Lee with these 6 regiments that he can spare out to cover this area. Pemberton gets word, and Pemberton rushes down to Vicksburg to take care of the situation here, because things have kind of eased up at Grenada with Van Dorn and all that. Davis, of course, goes to Jackson, makes the speech the next day, and they start bringing in those extra brigades, Barton and Vaughn and others. So that's what's going on there. That answer your question? I don't even remember what your question was.
Alabama.
Oh, yeah. Most of them are still up at Grenada. There, to my knowledge, no Alabama troops involved.
So at this point, they didn't make a push down past Grenada on the railroad. They were
right. They're stopped at Grenada. Yeah. In fact, the Grenada line, or the Yallabusha line, is never even tested. The farthest that the federal forces will get is like Coffeyville or so on. They won't even test the Yallabusha line. Okay, somebody else had a question. Yes, sir.
Follow-up. Sherman's original command would have been back at Oxford. They just said Sherman himself.
Well, Sherman has 3 divisions that he's brought from Memphis to Oxford. And meets Grant there. They kind of a wedge there. 2 of the divisions, Lawman's and I think they break up one of those, I forget the name, stay with Grant's army. Grant tells Sherman, take one of your divisions back to Memphis, and that's Morgan Smith, his favorite guy. So that's how Morgan Smith gets here. And that's where Sherman meets A.J. Smith and George W. Morgan, of troops, divisions formed out of troops that McClernand has sent down, and then they pick up Steele on the way down. So one of the divisions here had been with Sherman at White's Ferry and down to Oxford, College Hill, and all that. Okay, any other questions? Okay, what we're going to see next. Yes, ma'am. What was the main road? You see it's several different roads. Names. You'll hear it called the Yazoo City Road. Most of the time it's called the Valley Road because it's down in the valley.
Right here, kind of on the same,
roughly. Now, whether it's in the same footprint, I don't know, but roughly at the base of the hills. Now, there's also one farther inland called the Ridge Road that's up on the ridge. Valley Road, Ridge Road. Okay, what we're going to see now, we're going to see Thompson Lake Road. We're going to travel back in there just a little bit. You'll see Thompson Lake off to your right. Can't miss it. And then we'll turn around and come back and do just a little bit of talking detail still on both sides of Thompson Lake, but we'll be in between Thompson Lake and Chickasaw Bayou at that point. So just follow along. Very good. Did you get a picture? We had to go a little farther on up than, dusty and all that. Sorry about that, but you got a good view really coming back. You can see the sun kind of on it. So that's Thompson Lake. The head of it is just about right here. And if we look on our map, again, here's Thompson Lake. We are right about here, right in between Chickasaw Bayou, which is just to our west right there, and the head of Thompson Lake, actually a little farther over toward Thompson Lake, just a little bit. Couple of things to talk about here. On the 28th, Frederick Steele's division would be transported by their boats on up past the regular landing area, north of the mouth of Thompson Lake, and would come in along that route along the levee, Blake's levee, to a point just right in here, right on the other side of Thompson Lake. And it is there that they take extremely heavy fire from the Confederate defenses, which you can see. Again, you can see the good view of the Walnut Hills. It kind of slopes up just a tad there, so the Confederate defenses are farther up. And so the head of Steele's division, Blair's brigade, Hovey's brigade behind that, will come to this point. And apparently at that time, of course, things have changed a lot. But there was a whole lot of swampy area out in that area other side of Thompson Lake up there, and they just couldn't get through. In fact, what it created was basically a gauntlet, kind of a narrow area where the levee was, that if they were going to get through and be able to form closer to the Union, to the Confederate lines or anything, they would have to run this gauntlet, and the Confederates had artillery. They knew where, to put artillery and so on, and they had it covered under crossfire and so on, so they never make an attack here. And in fact, later in the day, after, again, heavy fire, major casualties. In fact, the colonel of the 13th Illinois, Colonel Wyman, will be killed. He'll be out front scouting, where can we go and so on. So a pretty high-ranking commander. Same day as General Smith, Morgan L. Smith, will be wounded. So they're taking some pretty substantial casualties even on the 28th, and we hadn't even got to the main assault yet on the 29th. So Steele's division will turn around, go back. Some will cross over land. Some will get back on their boats and go back down and land on the other side of Chickasaw Bayou, and will operate in that area. Now the other major thing is out in this area. Behind the cars back in there. And we're fast forwarding a little bit. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I don't want to have to go, do other stuff and then come back here again and all that kind of stuff. So fast forward just a little bit to the 29th and the main assault. Again, we're going to have the main assault occurring on the Lake Plantation Road, a little bit here at the Indian Mound. But there will be an assault also between Chickasaw Bayou and Thompson Lake. Where's our
Okay, sorry, I didn't help you.
snapper lady here?
She's a good clicker.
Okay.
There we go. All right, thank you.
Alrighty, you can certainly keep these, by the way.
Well, there we go. Okay. The area in between Chickasaw Bayou and Thompson Lake, just right out in here, there was another, I didn't really draw it, but there's another bayou that kind of, some say, connected Thompson Lake and Chickasaw Bayou. I don't think, where's our maps? I don't know, if you really want to see some of the period maps, he's got a folder there. You can take a look at those. Most of what the maps show is that this is kind of a bayou that runs off of the hills. It's a creek that forms on the hills. It kind of comes down there, but it basically covers the front between Chickasaw Bayou and Thompson Lake. There may be just a little gap basically where we're standing or so. Blair's brigade that fought over here on the 29th or on the 28th would cross Chickasaw Bayou and would make an attack over that bayou right here and would cross. And again, the bayou is gone. Do what? Oh, we got a car coming. Okay.
That's right. People wave in the south. That's right.
Okay. Yeah, everybody we met, he was waving. I'm not sure what. They probably planting some kind of winter weed or something. Anybody farmers? Is that
Probably some wheat.
would
With
be?
the wheat, with the right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Your way.
You can see just a little bit, and he can pass this around or whatever, but you can see a little bit of a kind of a connection between the bayou and Thompson Lake here. So that's what I'm talking about. If y'all want to pass it around or whatever. Is that the Library of Congress? Yeah. That's Sherman's map of the Library of Congress, which is not terribly weird. This is Chickasaw Bayou. That's Thompson Lake. We're right in the middle right here. So Blair's brigade will leave 2 regiments actually on the other side of Chickasaw Bayou, and he'll advance with his Missouri regiments and the 13th Illinois. I'm trying to think what the other one is. It's an Ohio regiment. East Ohio, I believe. At any rate, they will move forward across this bayou and really detailed letters and diaries about this attack, how the Confederates have cut down stumps about waist high, and the tops of the small trees have all intermingled and so on. Blair himself tries to move across this bayou, and it's like an 8 or 10 foot bluff on the other side bank, you know, and he tries to go up, and his horse stumbles and he falls off his horse, and he gets up and waves his sword and pushes him forward on foot and so on. So a lot of detail about that attack that moves forward. Basically, I would guess, of course, again, the lay of the land is completely different now, but somewhere right around out in that edge of the field over there, maybe even kind of to the right where you can see kind of those taller trees right there. That is somewhere in the area of where that bayou is. Apparently, it's no longer there. I've looked at digital, topographical maps that show terrain and so on. I've got a real cool. I found the place. It's actually a weather radar that shows you how much rain you've gotten in the last 3 days or whatever. But one of the maps you can program it on, and I just cut off all the rain. You can cut all that stuff off. But one of them is like terrain, and you can see. Hills and valleys and all that kind of stuff, and there's nothing out there now. So apparently all that's been filled in. But there was a big bayou there that Blair makes the attack across. He does make it across up toward the Confederate lines, but is driven back. In fact, all 4. You'll read a lot about the Confederates talk about. We took 4 stands of colors, and all 4 of those come from Blair's brigade there, the 13th Illinois and the Missouri regiments and so on. So they get whacked pretty hard. And then Blair, of course, falls back. That's the leftmost attack on the 29th. Again, the main attack will come across Chickasaw Bayou, and we'll detail that when we get back around to that point. But I did want to show you Blair's operations on the 28th, and then his attack between the 2 here on the 29th. Any questions here?
Is this a cleared out field like it is now?
No, it was heavy woods farther to the back, and then they get to that cutout place where the Confederates had cut it, where the actual bayou was. Then it is cleared on the other side of the bayou up to the Confederate lines, and they would be in the open moving toward the Confederate lines then. So not all of it would be cleared like it would be now. Yes, sir.
Were these the original roads that were here back?
I don't know about this one. I would guess not. There's probably some plantation roads and so on, but who's got the map? I don't know if it even shows a road in this area. Main ones, yeah, it doesn't even show a road. The main ones are the four that I've talked about: the Levee Road, the Lake Plantation Road, and then the one across the Indian Mound, and then the main racecourse road. So I'm guessing this was not a road. Maybe Blake had a farm road or something here, but to my knowledge, this was not a major road.
And the Confederate positions are about halfway up those hills.
No, they would be at the base. But we're gradually, we saw at the church kind of how it gradually went up a little bit. Now there's some accounts that there was Confederate artillery on the top, but there again, it's kind of the Missionary Ridge effect type thing. The major Confederate fortifications of Missionary Ridge were at the bottom, at the base, and then there were some halfway up and then at the top. And the real defense was supposed to be made at the bottom, but there were only skirmishers there, and of course the Federals moved right through. So most of the Confederate defenses are right at the base here, and of course all this would have been cleared from here on to the Confederate line, so that they could and see what they're shooting at.
Did Sherman have maps, or what kind of reconnaissance did he have before offloading troops into this morass?
None. And that's part of the problem. He gets here and says, "This is where we're going," and then they figure out this ain't the best place to be doing this thing. But it's
very risky to offload those between lakes where they can support each other.
Absolutely. But if you're we can't go past Snyder's Bluff. We just can't. We can't get past those big guns there. And so between here and Vicksburg, and we can't get past Vicksburg because of the heavy guns on the Vicksburg Bluff. So we got this 12-mile shot, and the only roads that lead from the river to the road in the bluffs that we need is right here at Chickasaw Bayou. So this is it. Real quick, we're going to go back to the race course and go back then in the middle of nowhere, literally, to the Yazoo River and see where the Federals will jump off. That's why I'm saying the attack here, we got a little ahead of ourselves. We'll go back to this main road, take a right, but then I'm going to cut off and go down into like a little residential area, cross the railroad, and then we'll take another left. Is that another car coming? Where we cross the railroad and take a left, if you go straight, you will see, I don't know if you can see it or not, but if you went straight up into those woods, there'll be a Quonset hut up on top of the Indian Mounds. Back behind, there's a blue house right at the very end. Look back behind that blue house, and you may get a glimpse of the Indian Mound or the Quonset hut up there. The Confederates had artillery on that Indian Mound, and just past it was Chickasaw Bayou, and that's the sand spit. That's the 6th Missouri attack area that Giles Smith will try to get across there. So we can't get back in there. We can't go hiking around. It's private property and all that, but that's the closest that we're going to be able to get. Then we'll get back on the main road and go to where we were at the Texaco station, take a right, and go back in all the way to the river. So we got a little bit of a drive this time, but be looking, watch your terrain and so on, and you'll see lakes and you'll see bayous, and the bayous that you see out there are probably what Chickasaw Bayou and so on looked like at the time. They've not been filled in and disturbed and so on. So when you think of Chickasaw Bayou, think what we're going to see on the way out there. So be sure and watch that. I'm going to get my sticks. Yeah, we've got plenty of sticks. We're right there. Bring that down a little narrow. Okay. Hey, that would make. We make care of that whole those days are wrong. Okay, everybody up here. All right, we came up. Okay, we're gonna be stiff. We came up the Johnson Plantation Road. Did y'all see the bayous and all that I was talking about? That's what we think when we say Chickasaw Bayou and bayous that they crossed and all that kind of stuff. Along there, Alligator Lake and so on were campsites for A.J. Smith's division as they began to press in. Morgan Smith's division also would utilize that road and then veer off before they get to Mcnutt Lake. We are right here at the corner where this makes this big bend, the river also makes the big bend, and the river currently today goes right there and then turns that way and then goes to Vicksburg. Now, again, that was the old river at the time, and the reason we stop right here, the best view we can get, see it kind of goes up in there. That was the old river or that was the current river at the time. It's the old river now. The old river at the time is the current river, so it has switched up. But that's the bed of the river in 1862 as it goes up in there. So the gunboat that transports the Cairo that you're all interested in will come right by here and started landing troops. So we are here, and from here really to the mouth of Chickasaw Bayou, we won't quite go that far. We're going to go to the road and then kind of veer off down in here. But for the next 2 miles or so, they're going to be landing troops, 70-something transports, all these gunboats. They'll be shelling. There'll be a few Confederates pop their heads up on this side of the river, and they'll shell the other side of the river. But these are the landing areas for A.J. Smith, Morgan Smith, George Morgan, and then Steele ultimately will come back and get into this area. So another thing that we saw when we came up the road and teed into the road and took a left, all of you remember that, that's basically the area of the Johnson plantation homes, or the houses and gin and barns and all that kind of stuff. They were all burned by the Federal Navy as the Union Navy moves up into this area. It's a good place to talk about the Cairo. As early as the 11th and 12th of December, in preparation for what we're going to be involved in here, the Army coming down, the Navy will move up the Yazoo River all the way nearly to Snyder's Bluff, getting the torpedoes, what they call torpedoes, which we today would call them mines. Some of them are electrically detonated mines. They would be on the bank, like, down here, and you see a boat come along and you press a button. I don't know exactly how it worked, but it would detonate. Others would just be kind of on contact detonation, and that's apparently what happened with the Cairo farther up the river. But their duty is to basically minesweep. Now, we know about minesweepers today. The Navy has dedicated vessels to do minesweeping, and that's essentially what they're doing in the Yazoo, getting ready all the way up as far as they can get to Snyder's Bluff, removing these mines. And so the Cairo, there's a smaller flotilla, the Rattler and the Memora, I believe, I forget the exact name, had been up the river on the 11th, said, hey, we found a whole bunch of torpedoes, we got to go back and get those. So Commander Walk, Porter's not here yet. Porter's still, he's actually stuck on a sandbar up above Cairo, around Cairo actually. But he'll come down with Sherman on the after the 20th. But Commander Henry Walk is in charge of the flotilla here at this point, and he will send the Cairo back up with another, I believe the Pittsburgh maybe, I'd have to check on it, with the Rattler and the Metamora and I think it's I'd have to check all these gunboat names. But anyway, they're sweeping the river when they get to one of the bends, of course, and they hear firing up ahead. Now, Commander Selfridge, Thomas Selfridge, is the flotilla commander. He's the ranking officer aboard the Cairo. He's the captain of the Cairo, and he hears the firing, so he rushes ahead in order to get up there and to support what he's got the big guns to support whatever's going on. Well, come to find out, they're taking pot shots. They think at Confederates, and they're shooting at torpedoes in the river. So it's really not that big of a that big of a deal. But the Cairo has surged forward. It's probably up right around in here. Has surged forward, and at that point, he finds a couple of mines and gets rid of them by placing his boat on top. Somebody says he found some mines and promptly removed them by placing his boat on top of them. And of course, you can see, if anybody's been to the Cairo, you can see where the mines hit. There's nothing left of that particular section of the vessel there on the what would it be, the port bow, I think is what it would be. So you can see that went down in 12 minutes, of course, and you know the story, and it was later raised, and our friend Ed that recently passed away was instrumental in all of that. Can you imagine Ed going up and down this river in an aluminum boat hunting for the Cairo? So that's that. Now, just incidentally, obviously, the Cairo's not the only gunboat lost. There were, how many city class ironclads? 7 of them, I believe. The Mound City and the Pittsburgh and the Cairo and the Cincinnati, all named after cities along the Ohio and the Mississippi River. Several of them were sunk. Cincinnati was sunk at Vicksburg on May the 27th, I believe, by Confederate fire from the guns on the bluff of the river there. But it was later raised. Several of them were sunk at Plum Point Bend, Plum Point up in Tennessee. So these things are sunk and they're raised, and so on Cincinnati, that was the second time it'd been sunk. And so that's kind of, that's almost Hundley-like, you couldn't have got me to volunteer for the 4th crew of the Hundley. They brought it back up. But all of them but 2 survived the war. The Cairo, of course, in the bottom of the Yazoo, just upriver here, that was later brought up. What was the other one lost? Anybody know? The original name was the St. Louis. That was at Fort Donelson and Fort Henry and all of that. But when they changed the name, actually, in the fall of 1862, when the boats originally under Army command were transferred to Navy command. And when they did, they found out we've already got a St. Louis on our rolls on list of ships. So we got to change the name. So they changed the name to the Baron de Kalb after the Prussian military officer in the American Revolution. And so the Baron de Kalb was the name. And in the operations, we got a bug marching across the Delta there. In the operations after the fall of Vicksburg in July of 1863, flotilla moving up with Francis Heron toward Yazoo City, the Baron de Kalb is also sunk in the Yazoo. So farther up the river, there's another ironclad, and I'm surprised somebody hadn't gone and dug up, and done like the Cairo. But the Baron de Kalb is actually still in the Yazoo River. As I understand it was blown pretty much to pieces. It was I don't know how much of it, would be left. But there is another ironclad, just like the Cairo, in the Yazoo River up nearer to Yazoo City. Okay, so this is the beginning point of the landing zone, and for 2 miles or so up till Chickasaw Bayou and a little bit this side of it, they'll be landing troops starting on the 26th, 3 brigades on the 26th, and then fully on the 27th, and the Army, of course, will begin to push inward. Now, what we will do is turn around. Yeah, that's going to be fun. And right around the bend here, there's a little bit of wide place in the road, so I'll probably go up there and just turn around. So do the best you can, and we'll turn right back around, and we'll go along. This is some of the best views you'll get of the river, but you'll see it on the right the whole way, parts of it. And so we'll go back past the Johnson plantation, where it was. The Navy, that's what I started talking about. The Navy will actually fire into the Johnson plantation buildings and burn them. They'll be burned. Johnson doesn't have a T in it, it's Johnson. But word got around to these Union soldiers when they started landing here, hey, this is the Johnson plantation, T, with a T in it. And they finally convinced themselves this is Albert Sidney Johnston's plantation. And diary after letter, you will read, we landed on the plantation of Albert Sidney Johnston, the general we killed at Shiloh. I kid you not, this is the word that went around the Union Army, and it has made it into some popular history. There is a historian that I will not mention his name, a naval historian. Some of you may recognize his name if I mentioned it, but I was reading a book the other day about, well, I'm going to tell you that because you'll know who it is. But anyway, he was talking about, his naval book, landed at the plantation owned by Albert Sidney Johnston, who had died several years earlier, or several months earlier at the Battle of Shiloh. So he took it hook, line, and sinker. This is not Albert Sidney Johnston's plantation. This is Walter Johnson, and his plantation buildings do not make it. But that's right about where the T is. I don't know exactly where the footprint of the buildings were or anything like that. But we're going to go back past where we came in, just go straight there at that T, and we'll go down and follow the river till about probably this point, and then the road will curve around and we'll get on the Lake Plantation. Everything we've been doing so far over here is the Blake Plantation. Here's the Johnson Plantation. The Lake Plantation will be in the middle, and we'll make our next stop right as we get to Chickasaw Bayou, right about where the gin house, the cotton gin, was, and then the lake house, the lake plantation house, will be a little bit farther forward. But from there, we will start the process of detailing this major attack as we go across Chickasaw Bayou there. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
When did they start making gunboats?
Well, what do you mean by gunboats? That's
I mean, use the Cairo.
the ironclad
Yeah.
gunboats. Is that what you're talking about? Of course, we've had gunboats in all of naval history, wooden boats.
Yeah.
You know, sloops of war and
Yeah.
man of war, that kind of stuff. The European navies had done some with naval ironclads, covering parts of the boats with iron. This is a new thing in the Western Hemisphere, of course, and the first gunboats that are built that are iron-plated are the city-class gunboats here in the West, built up around St. Louis, at Mound City, and at Coronda Lake. That's another one of the.
So they had a marina or wherever, boat manufacturing place
Up north on the Ohio and around just south St. Louis at Coronda Lake. This predates the Monitor. All we hear about is the Monitor versus Merrimack. That was the first ironclad versus ironclad.
Yeah.
But the first action by ironclads, the first naval action, came at Fort Henry in February of 1862, which predates the, when was the battle between the ironclads? March the 6th or so, I believe, at Hampton Roads. So Fort Henry, the first time that ironclads see action in the Western Hemisphere, or really in the world, they hadn't seen action, I don't believe, in Europe. They existed, but the first time that they actually go into action, this is world history, you know, is at Fort Henry. But don't get, you know, if you've looked at the Cairo, what you see now where the iron plating is, it's not like the whole thing's made out of iron. It's not like the whole thing's covered with iron. I mean, you cover the whole thing with iron, and it's not going to float. It's going, you know, it's going to sink. Now, the Monitor was made, as I understand it, pretty much out of iron. You know, it was made of iron, with framing, you know, inside the wood and all that kind of stuff. But these are basically wooden gunboats with iron covering, plating on the most important parts, basically, along the casemate where the guns are, especially the bow, the front there, along the amidships where the machinery is, the boilers and the engines and all that kind of stuff. The tops were not; they were just wood. They were completely wood.
When we saw
So
the Cairo, they had rails that they had bent on the sides.
railroad iron, yeah.
Railroad.
That was as I understand it, a later addition. Those sections right at the very front were later additions of railroad iron that were put on there. And in fact, the original pilot houses were not iron plated. I believe they were wood, just a square box. And then later you get the iconic sloped, whatever, not triangular, but whatever shape that is. Conical pilot houses that, of course, are intended to deflect shots when they come around. All right, yes, sir.
Where was Barton's brigade posted?
Barton's brigade is back. We'll talk about the line as we get closer to the main attack. Barton's brigade is split up though. Some of the regiments will go here, some will go there, wherever the hottest spots are. And a couple of those regiments will go in the 42nd Georgia, for instance, right there at close to the Indian Mound, but a little farther forward. I failed to mention there. I told you wouldn't have to hold this long, didn't I? I told her she wouldn't have to hold it long, but I'm rattling on. Between the main attack at the Lake Plantation Road and the Indian Mound, they tried to put a corduroy, or not a corduroy, but a pontoon bridge in there. Engineer named Patterson tried to do the bridge, and the Confederate fire was so difficult and covered so much by the Georgians and others that they were unable to do that. So they're in the area. They're in here, and they're kind of spread out a little bit. And so I can't, because this is not a national park that has a sign, you know, the 42nd Georgia, whatever's here. I can't go to the specific spot and say this is where they are. But where we traveled up and down parallel to Chickasaw Bayou, Chickasaw Creek, basically, they were in that line there. Did you have an ancestor in Barton's brigade? Or?
Yeah, my great-grandfather, his two brothers were all in the 40th Georgia.
40th Georgia. Okay. All right. Wow.
But they were captured at Champion Hill.
At Champion Hill. Wow. Yeah. Barton doesn't. We'll talk about Champion Hill a little bit later, and Barton's brigade makes that movement on behind the line around the hill there. So I'll show you where all that is. All right, any other questions?
Are these 3 plantations? If it's only the acreage of these 3 plantations, and if there's only 3, it looks like it's pretty big.
Oh, they're big, huge plantations. Yeah, these are the iconic Tara 12 Oaks type plantations that we're talking about here. Not the little bitty, 6 slave, whatever. These are the big ones.
Houses of pictures of the houses before they were burned, before all of this?
Not to my knowledge. There may be some in existence, but not to my knowledge. I haven't looked at that far.
Tim, what would be the approximate number of slaves for a typical plantation?
A big lowland plantation like this would have upwards, I would guess, of in the score, 60, 80, 100, maybe a couple hundred slaves. You could look in the slave schedules for 1860 and see how many Benson Blake owned and Walter Johnson and so on, but I don't know off the top of my head. But big plantations in low-lying ground like this, really fertile areas would have multiple slaves, way over the 20 that normally is the demarcation of elite, planter type thing. Yes, sir.
What was that detour we took off? What were we supposed to be looking for when we went off of 61?
And across the railroad?
Yeah.
That was the Indian Mound. I don't know if any of you saw that or not, but when we got it right across the railroad and then took the left, you couldn't see the Quonset hut up on the Indian Mound, but that was right there where we made that turn, was where the Indian Mound's just right up in those woods, and that's where the 6th Missouri at the Sand Spit, as Sherman called it. That was one of the small attacks there. Then just this side of that would have been where the pontoon bridge was attempted to be laid, but then the main attack is going to come right at Chickasaw Bayou with on the lake plantation.
Okay,
so
and
that was the Indian Mound that we were.
And then is this part of the old river that's still now?
That's the old and the new.
And the new. Okay.
This stretch right here is always been Yazoo, but where it splits right there, that was 1862, and that was what was called the Old River.
Where would be the ferry, the Cary ferry?
Kings.
Yeah, there is a ferry you go on around. It's a couple of miles around up here. When they redid this, it cut off a whole section of land out there. It's like hunting clubs and all that kind of stuff, and there's no road to it because it's between here and the Mississippi River. And so for people that own that land and to go hunting and whatever, there is a ferry that operates across the river. So I don't know what it costs and all that, but if you want to go ride the ferry for the rest of the afternoon, you could get across there. I don't know what you do over there, but go ride the ferry.
What are we looking at for, like, not being familiar with this area, but what are we looking at for an average channel depth in a river this size?
Anything I said would be pure conjecture. Deep enough in the channel to get an ironclad nearly below the water. The only thing left were the flagpoles and stacks. And what was that? Oh, you were fine.
Pretty much flat bottom boats, weren't they?
Yeah, they were flat bottom boats. Yeah, so
wouldn't have to be that deep.
It wouldn't have to be that deep, but those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty substantial.
Right.
And it does slope on the side. The Cairo, for instance, they tried to nudge it into the bank to keep it in higher water, and even tried to tie it off to trees, but the ropes broke and so on, and it slid back down into the channel there, and went into deep water. So, but I at the deepest, I would just venture a guess 20, 30 feet or so, maybe more than that. It's very deepest, but I don't know. Anybody else have it? Somebody may know. Right below water, yeah. Yeah.
The smokestack was still visible?
Yeah, they had to pull the smokestack because, again, these boats are salvageable and can be raised, and they didn't want the Confederates getting it, so they pulled it down and pulled the flag mast down, and the site was then lost to history until the 1960s.
How did he find it? He had just like metal detectors or on the boat or something?
Well, his account is they're in an aluminum boat and they're going up and down, back and forth, kind of pattern, testing and all that, and they had a compass. And when they got over this thing, the compass just started going crazy, because of all the metal in it and all that kind of stuff. So, wow. And there it is. And I think, if I remember, if you're interested in it, read Hard Luck Ironclad. It's a book on the Cairo. I think they had metal poles, and this kind of tells you something of the depth as well. You know, that they could test, and they thought, okay, if this is it, let's test. So they put the pole down in the river and they struck metal, and then they would go a little bit over and it would go a little deeper. So they said, all right, that's the sloping casemate of the thing that they were hitting. You know, and of course it's in mud. But really, really interesting process.
I heard him speak at the Lynchburg Roundtable many years ago, and he was talking about it. Of course, it was, I think, came up in '61. So it was the beginning of the centennial. CBS News was filming it. They pull up one of the naval guns. Somebody runs a crowbar down the muzzle. There's a shell in there. It misses the fuse by just a little bit.
Oh,
so Bear said they might have almost filmed the last casualties of the war.
Yeah.
As I understand it, when they raised the bale and kind of tilted it, water bubble or air bubbles came up, and that air had been trapped in there since 1862, and had, you know, didn't know it was going to happen, but had we known ahead and all that, you could have somehow tested, you know, went up under it, tested that air to see the air quality compared to today. Of course, I'm sure it was pretty stale, having been in a bale for, you know, 100 years. But anyway, all right, we digress. We need to go. Let's just turn around somehow and go to Allen City and transferred them to Cincinnati for operations against Fort Henry and so on, you know, which is kind of cool. So.
And these were all federal troops rather than state militias. The Army was organized by states.
Yeah,
the Navy was different.
Well, it's very complicated.
Okay,
the Navy is under the Army at this point, or the gunboats. These are Army gunboats led by naval officers, but under Army command and paid for by the Army until the fall of 1862, when they're transferred to the Navy. Hence the St. Louis. There's already a St. Louis on our record book, so we got to change the name. So, but in terms of the Army. These are naval personnel. It's not like it's the 27th Mississippi or the 13th Illinois or something. These are U.S. Navy personnel, seamen, but they're under Army command. So it gets kind of wishy-washy and complicated there a little bit. All right, this is Chickasaw Bayou. It's a good place to stop and let you see Chickasaw Bayou and get a little closer view if you want to. So we're going to stop here. We're also in the vicinity of the Lake Gin House, right in the area. And of course, all this is cotton field until you get to heavier woods towards Chickasaw Bayou. And the Union forces will push through that. So we're right in the Lake Gin area. Did anybody notice that we're coming across the field? You look to your right and see Walnut Hills. Inside the Vicksburg National Military Park.
Correct. But was that in relation to any lines or anything? Or that
yes, it's on the Union line. What is marking is Battery Selfridge, which after Selfridge loses his boat here, he's actually given other commands. He goes and meets Porter and says, he blurts out, I guess there's going to be a court of inquiry. And Porter says, court of inquiry? Heck no, I can't blame you for putting your boat in harm's way. You know, I like aggressive commanders. So he gives them another command. But at the siege of Vicksburg, the Navy is split into basically two flotillas, a northern bunch and a southern bunch that has passed the Vicksburg batteries earlier and attacked Grand Gulf and all that. And so really, the Navy is extremely important, but most of the shelling is being done by the mortars. And so the ironclads are just kind of, on station there. And so Selfridge gets the big idea, let's land some naval guns and put them in battery on the Union siege lines. And these are big guns, and we can blow them out like that. Sherman is not. There's 3 batteries, one down on Herron's lines, one on McPherson's lines, and at the Shirley House there, and then one on Sherman's line. Sherman's not real interested in it, but he says, you know, let's throw the Navy a bone. They've helped us so much, so we'll let them do it. And he says basically they're more loud than anything, but we let them play, you know, let them shoot. So that if you hear the train. Yeah. Everybody just hear the train? That is significant. Where's the fire, dude? The Union forces out here could hear that in Vicksburg. They could hear trains coming in, whistling and all that, and of course they're thinking they're getting reinforcements, which is exactly what they were doing. The Confederates were bringing in reinforcements. So that was a great. We actually called this morning and asked them to do that, just specifically for you, because we want to give you the ultimate experience.
I haven't put it together, I missed it.
Well, he may do it. I don't know. Anyway, so that's be looking for that as we go around. So I want to show you Chickasaw Bayou. I want to show you, you know, note that. Now the initial skirmishing as the divisions will land all the way from where we just were. All the way to basically this point. On the 26th, 3 brigades will begin to move forward. Blair's brigade's one of them. Another is the brigade of George Morgan's division under John DeCourcy, and I guess that's how you say it. I don't, you know, you get into Hovey, Taliaferro. Is what? Tolliver. How do you get Tolliver out of Taliaferro?
Have to be a Virginian.
Well, you got to be a Virginian, yeah. The hoose. Tolliver lives in the hoose. But anyway, wait till I do my Massachusetts accent. I parked my car in Harvard Yard. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know how you get all these names, and some of them are difficult, but I say it DeCourcy, I guess. It's DeCourcy. Anybody have any idea how it? DeCourcy or Dickocy or I don't know, but anyway, we'll call it DeCourcy. His is the brigade that is going to do the majority of the fight. They'll lose the majority of the casualties here. They will push inland. There is fighting as the Union forces begin to move across these big fields closer to the rivers where the cotton fields and so on are. Then they hit patches of woods. As they begin to move across these bayous. Now, as we go forward, this is the Lake Plantation Road. As we go forward, you will see that we'll cross various bayous. Now, some of them have been filled in, some of them are still there, but you'll see what I'm talking about. Very confusing. Somebody asked about what maps did Sherman have and all of that. These Yankees are very confused because they're moving forward and they say, okay, here's a bayou, Engineer Patterson, bridge this bayou. Put the pontoon. We're at Chickasaw Bayou. Put the pontoons on it down. And so they bridge the bayou, and it's not Chickasaw Bayou. It's the wrong one. It's 1, 2, or 3 bayous back. You know, so they are a little bit confused as to where they are and how they're getting there and so on. But they know it when they get to Chickasaw Bayou because that's where the really heavy resistance is. Now there has been resistance out here. Louisiana Regiment, I believe the 29th maybe. Portions of the 46th Mississippi. Oh, you got the blue and the gray out here. Yeah, this is December 22nd. I need to get my glasses. 17th Louisiana. Portions of the 46th Mississippi, and then you go on down to the 28th, and there's 29th Louisiana, a little bit farther out. So if you want to look at these are the best maps. I just didn't have them. Yeah. Those blue-gray maps are always wonderful. Terry Winchell wrote that article and did that. So there is fighting this far out at the Gin House and elsewhere. In fact, the Confederates will have a couple pieces of artillery set up here in the very early stages of this, and then the Union forces will drive them back. Bring in, I think, the 5th Ohio Battery or something set up here. But anyway, the gist of it is the Union forces, as they move inland, the Confederates will fall back to their main defenses back there at the church and the Indian Mound and all that we have seen earlier. Who asked about the Georgia Barton's Brigade? Was that you? I'll look just real quick. Again, it's split up. The I believe it's the 42nd was at the pontoon bridge site. I think it's the 42nd was at the sand spit, the Indian Mound thing there, and the rest of Barton's brigade, as I understand it, was up around Mcnutt Lake that we basically went around. So up closer to where the racetrack was, where the log wood yard is now. So up closer to that area. Not a lot of heavy fighting in that area. Again, the heaviest fighting is going to be on the Lake Plantation Road, where DeCourcy pushes forward, and George Morgan will make his attack there. So we're going to follow this road along, look at the bayous as we go along. We're going to follow right by Chickasaw Bayou, and you'll get a lot of good views of it. As we go around the corner here, look at the Walnut Hills up ahead, and maybe you'll get a glimpse of the Union Monument there as well. Any questions here? Yes, sir.
Would the Union Army be advancing in battle lines, or would they be in columns?
Battle lines at the front, and then the rest of the brigades stacked up behind in column. You know, if you're 2 or 3 brigades behind, there's no use in being in battle line at that point. But at the very front, you would have had skirmishers out, obviously, and then you would have been in battle line behind that, and then you would have stacked up farther behind. But by this time, they're spreading out. You know, with A.J. Smith, the road we went out, and y'all saw all those bayous and all that out there. A.J. Smith and Morgan L. Smith would move along that road, and that's where they would camp, you know, on the night of the 27th, and then on the night of the 28th, and so on. And then George Morgan would come along in this area, and then Steele, of course, put him around over there. So, yeah, that's. Any other questions? All right, well, let's move forward. We ought to hurry and get out of the road and make this guy wait. All kinds of stuff. Also brought this along. I know it's small and you can't see it. Actually, that's where I index the books. You index your own book? I've always said if the index came first, no book would ever get written, because that's just brutal almost. By the way, were there any women at Chickasaw Bluff?
Yes,
Chickasaw Bayou?
actually.
Okay. If y'all don't know Shelby Harrell is, or is it Harrell now?
Harold Heidelbaugh now.
Is Heidelbaugh?
Yes.
Okay, all right. They just got married. She has written the definitive book on women soldiers that dressed up like men, you know, dressed as men to go with their husbands or whatever. Grab one of your books, Shelby, and bring it over here. It's a really wonderful book. I read it for the publisher, and then put a blurb, you know, gave him a blurb on the... She sure did. She may have some copies if anybody's interested. She was talking about it. She said, women fought in the Civil War? I said, yeah. And so she's going to read that book when we get home. I got a copy. The publisher sent me a copy. All that. So
that was you. That's what they call you.
Yeah. I think it was.
It was. I recognize the writing.
Oh, really? I think it was. I read so many manuscripts and so on, I can't remember. So
she served as a courier here at Chickasaw Bayou. She was with David Stewart's brigade.
Oh, David Stewart in A.J. Smith's, or in Morgan Smith's division.
So she had married Henry Hart in Illinois, and did not want to be separated from him. They were newlyweds, and so she disguised herself as James Strong and came with Henry. Henry was a blacksmith in 127th Illinois, so he would not have been on the front lines, but his wife would have been, carrying messages to all these smiths.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that in my book about all the smiths and the challenges she would have had here at
Which
Chickasaw
one did I go
Bayou.
to? Yeah.
Exactly. So she didn't have an easy time here, but so she was a courier here during the Battle of Chickasaw Bayou, and then there were 2 more here too. And I will say that one of these did not make it back to Illinois alive, and you'll have to read my book. So I do have these. I've got 10 of them for sale for $20. So
really good book.
Yes, Dr. Smith even says so right here.
All right, very good. I did not remember. Of course, I read it, but did not remember specifically that 3 were here. All right. You probably can't see it, but when I work out, you know, when I'm writing about the books or about the battle and so on, I draw my own maps and who is where and all of that. And I don't know if you can tell, this Thompson Lake here Chickasaw Bayou. We're right about here. Here's the Indian Mound with the 31st Louisiana, 40 or can't read my right, 52nd Georgia. Can't read it upside down. Here's the pontoon. Here's Mcnutt Lake. Your Barton. Where's Barton guy? Wherever, Georgian. There you are. He would have been over here farther to toward the racetrack here. Where we are is the main attack.
This would be oriented that way, your map?
Yes, like that. Coming in,
so looking this
Chickasaw
way.
Bayou is right behind us, looking that direction. So John DeCourcy's brigade of George Morgan's division will make the attack here. 22nd Kentucky, 54th Indiana, 16th Ohio, 42nd Ohio, in two lines, and they would push forward. Apparently, across Chickasaw Bayou was a shallow place, what they termed a ford. And it was an improved ford. They call it a corduroy ford. Y'all know what corduroy is? You know what corduroy fabric is. But you know what a corduroy road is? If you run across that, yeah, you cut down trees and basically just pave the road with trees. Now, it's going to be bumpy if you're in a wagon, particularly without springs or something, but at least you're not going to get stuck, you know. So that's what corduroy is. So apparently they corduroyed somehow that ford to get across. Probably something similar to a cattle gap or something. That's not off the ground, I would guess, you know. So something like that. How wide it is, difficult to say. And exactly, again, this is not a preserved national military park. I've read some accounts that says it's farther back there. I am of the opinion, we should have talked to that dude as he came by, that right in this wood line is, and right in the dip just the side of the railroad, that is Chickasaw Bayou. Have you studied it?
That's
much?
what I found.
Is that what your conclusion?
That would be my, if I had to put money on it, yes, sir.
Yeah, especially given where and I actually asked him about Chickasaw Bayou in front of the Indian Mound and all that, and he said, man, all that's been filled in. He said that's actually higher than the fields where Chickasaw Bayou was then. So it's completely different. But I'm of the opinion that right in that wood line, if you look at maps and all that, that's where it is. So DeCourcy's brigade would have moved forward just like this along the Lake Plantation Road. Right across Chickasaw Bayou will be Blair's brigade that we talked about earlier, of course, that we did kind of out of sequence a little bit. But they would be attacking there, and then 700 yards or so farther in that direction would be the pontoon bridge site that never gets across, and then a little farther on down the line would be the sand spit and the Indian Mound. So DeCourcy makes his attack here. He's not at all interested in it. There's a little bit of confrontation between George Morgan and Sherman. They don't like each other, and it will get worse when they go to Arkansas Post after this, and they'll blame each other. Read George. Anybody got Battles and Leaders? George Morgan has a article in there about Chickasaw Bayou, and he gives Sherman fits and all that. And Sherman later on says, well, if he had attacked like I wanted him to, then, you know, we'd have won. We'd have taken those hills, and we'd have taken Vicksburg in December and all that, which is a bunch of hogwash. But they really didn't like each other, and DeCourcy's kind of the one that catches it. You know, when Daddy comes home and had a bad day, what does Daddy do? Fusses at Mama, and then Mama takes it out on the little one, and then she takes it out. Well, she don't have to have a bad day to take it out on her little sister. She takes it out on her little sister anyway. And then little sister goes and does what? Kicks the dog, right? And then the dog goes and chases the cat. It all goes down. Yeah, she won't kick the dog. But it's kind of like that. It rolls downhill, and DeCourcy is the farthest downhill, and he's the one that has to make this attack. He's not interested in it at all. He knows what's going to happen. So the frontline units move forward. These Indianas and Kentuckians, the 22nd Kentucky. Not all of the 22nd Kentucky on the right is able to get across the corduroy part, so they have to stop and kind of come back around. It gets pretty ugly pretty quickly. Some of the rearward regiments, 54th Ohio and 16th Ohio, I believe, don't even make it all the way up, but some do get across and kind of across the railroad there. We'll see as we go up to kind of some open ground. They'll reform there, and they'll make attacks against the Confederate line up there, some Louisianans. The Tennesseans here, the 3rd and I believe the 30th. Who was Tennessee interested in the Hyman's 10th? Yeah, some of your guys up there would be defending this specific area. And again, there's artillery that's you know, cross point, crossing their views there and so on. So really deadly zone. But they do get across, but then they fall back. Sherman will send in one other brigade, Thayer's brigade, John Thayer, and you know him from Shalom. Lew Wallace's division had Morgan L. Smith, that sound familiar, Thayer's brigade, and then Charles Whittlesey. Whittlesey's not in the picture anymore. But John Thayer will lead his brigade, also of Steele's division that has come around and reinforcing now. And they'll move forward, but Morgan himself will cut it off, kind of like Perry, the tail got cut off at the light and so on. He'll cut it off after the 1st regiment. So only one regiment of the Thayer's brigade actually moves forward. That's the 4th Iowa. Anybody, who's from Iowa? Somebody from Iowa? We got yeah, you're Iowa. The 4th Iowa will move forward and will deploy on the other side of Chickasaw Bayou and be beaten back. In fact, some of the they're a little bit to the right. Some of the Confederates, the Georgians and Louisianans at the pontoon bridge site, they don't have anything else going on right now, so they turn and they fire into the flank of the islands there. So the bottom line is, this is the major attack. Sherman always intends this to be the major attack because this is probably the best place to get across, and the Confederates absolutely know this. And Stephen D. Lee actually makes the comment that they must have had some really good scouts, because they came at the only conceivable places that they could come, and we had those covered like crazy, and we knew where the only places you could get across. They found them, and fortunately, you know, we had it covered. So the attack does not succeed. It costs about 1776 is the number of casualties, which is ironic, you know, the date and so on. Confederate casualties amount to like 180 something. You know, very, very lopsided fight here, and Sherman will begin to see the real picture here, that this is just not situated to be a place where we can win this thing. Now he'll hold on for a couple more days, actually till the 31st, when he and Porter hatched the idea of taking Steele's division plus one more brigade, Giles Smith's brigade, and going up to Snyder's Bluff, and we're just going to attack at Snyder's Bluff. And actually what we're going to do is require a bayonet attack. We're not going to fire guns. We're going to bayonet attack at Snyder's Bluff there. In fact, I've found, you know, letters and diaries and so on. One of them is talking about in Steele's division, talking about they had us draw our rounds so that we wouldn't. Our guns were loaded, but we had to draw the bullets out of them so that we couldn't fire, so that we would make a bayonet attack. You know, but that night it was a heavy fog, and Porter. I don't think Porter's real interested in this to begin with, and so they call that off. And by January the 1st, Sherman has basically said, "All right, this ain't gonna work. We gotta get out of here." Gets his guys back on the boats, and they head back out to the Mississippi River. He sends a message to I can't remember, if it's Grant or Washington or maybe Halleck in Washington, and he says, "I arrived, I landed my troops, I attacked, and I failed, and I reboarded the transports." That was my report, you know, and kind of like who was it? Caesar. I came, I saw, I attacked, I conquered. Vini Viti Vici, whatever it is, but he didn't succeed here. The problem here is, though, and we get back into the politics that somebody mentioned just a little bit ago. John McClernand is breathing down their throats now, and so he arrives like on, I think it's the 4th. And he wants to know, Sherman, what have you done with my army? This is my army. I recruited it, and I've given, you know, I've been given permission. I've got papers here. Y'all ever heard the joke?
You do with paper.
Yeah, do I? From Lincoln himself, and he waves those papers. I got papers. I heard the story about the old farmer that had a, you know, farm like this or something, and this government agent came along and told the farmer, "Well, I'm going to inspect your fields and all that." The farmer said, "Don't go out in that field." And the government agent said, "Well, yes, I am. I'm a government agent. I can go wherever." He said, "Don't go out in that field." And so the guy said, "Well, you just watch me. I've got papers." And he started, "I've got government papers. I can do this." And the guy said, "Do not go out in that field." And the guy said, "You watch me. I've got papers. I'm going where I want to." So he goes out in the field, and just a couple of minutes later, you hear him screaming, "Ah!" There's a bull after him, and that bull just charges about that far behind him. You know, and that farmer said, "Show him them papers." So McClernand has papers. He's got the papers here, and he says, "This is my army. I'm taking over." And then, of course, he goes up to Arkansas Post and all that. Now, the big problem is that what you have done is advanced the army all the way to Vicksburg. and now McClernand is in charge, you've got basically two options. You can either let McClernand stay in charge, or you can withdraw the Army back up to you, Grant, in West Tennessee. Now, Grant is way under a cloud here. Everybody says he's drunk and calling for his resignation and all that kind of stuff. What's going to be happening now if Grant withdraws the Army all the way from Vicksburg? He's done. He's not going to survive that. He's got to keep the Army here, but that's the problem. McClernand's going to be in charge if he's here. So the only other option is to do what? For Grant to come down here then and take complete charge over McClernand and Sherman and everybody. And so you've almost pushed too far, certainly to go back and try it again by the book. And now you're almost too close. What do you do now? And that's what we're going to start dealing with after lunch. And we'll get into the rest of the Vicksburg campaign.
Hey, Tim?
Yes, sir.
How aware was Sherman of what happened to Grant when all this is going on down here?
That's been a little bit of a debate. Some say he didn't know it. He gets word at Helena that Grant has suffered some kind of setback. He doesn't quite know exactly what it is, but some have said he didn't know anything about it. But he does. He's gotten word that there's something going on. But he's still wondering if something may turn up. In fact, he waits here a couple of more days. He says waiting to hear Grant's forces coming on south from Grenada, and he says, I think in his memoirs, and you can't always trust memoirs and so on, but he says, I've heard nothing from Banks farther south, I've heard nothing from Grant coming from Grenada, so I can't just stay here. So, and it's starting to rain, and if y'all noticed, did y'all see the things on the what is that, telephone or cyber or something, but they're all way above on the stilts and so on. Did you see the watermarks on those? Yeah. You can see watermarks. Yeah, right there. You see the watermarks. You don't want to be here in the dead of winter when it's starting to, the water rising and so on. So Sherman chooses we got to get back on the boats and get out of here, and we'll figure out what to do next. And that's when Grant goes into forget the book mode. Let's do it any way we can. So, all right. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How cold? This was December. How cold was it?
The weather plays a big role. In fact, as I was working on this book, I've kept a running tally. Anytime I read in a letter, diary, anything, that it rained on this day, I mark it. And it's amazing how many days out of December that it has rained somewhere in the operations area. So, and the big ones, of course, are the very first days, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th of December, dealing with Grant. But it rains on the night of the 27th, I believe, as they're starting to push inland. And in the night of the 29th, after the battle, that afternoon, it starts raining like crazy and turns really, really cold. December had been fairly mild up until that point. After the snow and so on, in early December, it had been really a mild December. But a cold front comes through, and it turns wickedly cold on the 29th and 30th. A little bit before that, 27th, 28th, but really cold on the 29th, 30th, and 31st. And these guys, they won't let them light fires. It's almost Fort Donelson-esque as these guys are miserable here. So the weather plays a major role. Yes, sir.
Is this the heaviest fire? Now, I read there was one unit that got down under a bridge and refused to come out. Was this the location of that?
That is probably the 6th Missouri over at the Indian Mound. Okay. They go down, and there's a big steep bluff, like 8 or 10 feet, that they hide themselves behind, and the Confederates are just right on top of them. In fact, they'd hold muskets over and fire blindly, almost like over a parapet or something. So that's probably what you're referencing.
Well, they said that they refused to advance.
Well, yeah.
I'm trying to know what location.
Not really able to at that point.
Yeah,
You could be talking about some of these guys like some of the Ohio units in the rear of the 54th Ohio or something. They will get up to the bed of the creek of the bayou and won't push forward anymore, mainly because they're telling them, hey, we don't need anybody else up here just to get killed. So that could also be what you're talking about. Not necessarily a bridge, but kind of in both cases behind the bluff of the bayou, just like we saw out here. You could certainly get behind that and be pretty safe.
So when Sherman pulls out of here, he puts them on the boats, takes them out to the river, then what's he do?
Well, it's not his
McClernand's
call
coming
anymore.
down, right?
Do I?
Well, McClernand hasn't
McClernand's
arrived
already
here yet. Oh, he
yeah.
is here.
Yeah, by the 4th. They'll go out to Milliken's Bend, and McClernand will pull back just a little bit to Napoleon, Arkansas, the mouth of the river, that a little bit farther north, and that's when he'll hatch this idea. And Sherman's involved in it some. Here comes the car. And then they'll go up the Arkansas River. It's the Arkansas River, Wright River, whichever river it is, to Arkansas Post. And on the, I think that's the 11th. And Grant jumps all over him. This is a wild goose chase, he says, and it's just obvious that McClernand's going to go off on his own just to spite me, basically. And that's when Grant begins to realize I've got to come down here and take control of this situation.
Well, people have been killed over egos, haven't they?
You're exactly right.
Human history.
Okay. Again, we can answer questions all afternoon. At this point, we need to start thinking about Champion Hill. Before that, probably a little bit of lunch and some bathrooms. So, what, Perry? Let's discuss this. Did everybody bring something, or do you need to go get something, or where do we stand on all that?
The answer to